The elevator to nowhere. The late-night shift, Mark Reynolds had never been afraid of elevators. As a security guard working the night shift in an old corporate building, he had taken the same elevator hundreds of times. It was slow, creaky, and sometimes stopped between floors, but nothing unusual ever happened. That was until one night changed everything. It was 2:47 a.m. when Mark decided to take a break. The security office was on the ground floor, but he wanted to check the surveillance feeds from the 10th floor, where reports of strange noises had been filed. It wasn't the first time he'd heard such complaints. Employees had spoken about whispers, flickering lights, and cold spots. Stepping into the elevator, he pressed the button for the 10th floor. The doors closed with a groan, and the cabin lurched upward. The old fluorescent light inside flickered for a moment before stabilizing. Everything felt normal, until the elevator stopped on the 5th floor, the woman in the elevator. The doors slid open, revealing a dimly lit hallway. Mark frowned. He hadn't pressed this floor. There was no one outside, no footsteps, no signs of movement. Yet after a few seconds, a woman stepped inside. She was dressed in a black dress that reached her ankles. Her long dark hair cascaded over her face, hiding her features. She didn't acknowledge Mark. Instead, she turned her back to him and faced the wall of the elevator. Mark felt an uneasy chill creep up his spine. "Which floor?" he asked, his voice dry. Silence. The doors closed. The elevator continued its slow ascent. Mark swallowed hard, trying to shake off the unease. He glanced at the woman again. Her posture was stiff, unnatural. Then, without warning, the lights in the elevator went out. The darkness speaks. Mark's breath hitched as the elevator was swallowed in complete darkness. A mechanical groan echoed through the cabin, followed by a sharp jolt. Then he heard it. A whisper. It was faint, almost like wind slipping through cracks in the walls. But the sound grew stronger, circling him, pressing into his ears. "You shouldn't be here." Mark's pulse pounded. He turned towards the woman, barely able to make out her silhouette. "Who are you?" he managed to ask. No response. The elevator jolted again, violently this time, sending Mark crashing against the side. The lights flickered back on. The woman was now facing him. Mark's stomach clenched. Her eyes, if they could be called that, were black voids, empty and soulless. Her mouth was stitched shut, thin lines of dark thread holding her lips together. The whisper returned, but her mouth never moved. "Let me out." The endless descent. Mark slammed his hand on the emergency button, but the elevator didn't stop. The number panel flashed erratically, 9, 3, 7, 2, before settling on something impossible. B99. The elevator was descending, but the building had no basement. His breath quickened. This wasn't right. None of this was real. He turned back to the woman, but she was gone. In her place, black handprints stained the walls of the cabin as if someone had been clawing to escape. The elevator kept descending. The air grew heavier, thick with something rotten. The fluorescent light flickered erratically, casting strange shadows that didn't match his movements. Then a chime. The doors creaked open. The floor that shouldn't exist. A wave of cold, damp air hit Mark. The sight beyond the doors was impossible. It was a hallway, long and narrow, stretching endlessly into the dark. The walls were lined with old, rusted doors, each with a small, fogged-up window. A deep sense of wrongness settled over him. The place felt abandoned, forgotten. A noise echoed down the corridor, a soft, wet scraping. Mark's instincts screamed at him to stay in the elevator. But when he pressed the closed door button, the panel fizzled and died. The doors stayed open, and the scraping grew louder. A figure emerged from the darkness, crawling, dragging its cell. Its limbs were twisted, unnatural, like a puppet with its strings tangled. Its head lolled to the side, and its mouth, stitched shut like the woman's, twitched violently. Mark stepped back, heart pounding. He slammed his hand against the button panel, desperate for anything to work. The creature's stitched mouth began to split open. The threads unraveled, tearing at the flesh, revealing a black, gaping hole. And then it screamed. The sound was unlike anything Mark had ever heard. It was pure agony, layered with countless voices, all crying, all begging. The elevator doors slammed shut. The cabin shook violently, the buttons flashing erratically. Mark gripped the railing, his mind racing. Then, silence. The panel now read 10. The doors slid open. The aftermath. Mark stumbled out, breathing heavily. The 10th floor was normal, the same office space, the same flickering lights. But something was wrong. The security cameras in the hallway showed static. The temperature felt too cold. Then he saw it. A reflection in the glass window beside him. The woman from the elevator. She stood behind him, head tilted, those empty eyes staring straight at him. Mark turned instantly, but there was nothing, just the quiet hum of the office. His radio crackled. "Mark? You there?" He grabbed it, his hands still shaking. Yeah, I'm here. You okay? We lost your signal for a while. Thought you were stuck." Mark swallowed hard. He looked back at the elevator. The doors were open, revealing an empty cabin. No handprints, no signs of the nightmare he just experienced. He forced a laugh. Yeah, just a glitch. But deep down he knew that wasn't just a glitch. And whatever was in that elevator wasn't done with him yet. Epilogue days passed. Mark tried to convince himself it was a hallucination. Stress, lack of sleep. But then, strange things started happening. The elevator would stop at the 5th floor, even when no one pressed the button. Security cameras glitched whenever he walked by. And every now and then, in the reflection of the elevator's stainless steel doors, he would see her, waiting for him to ride again.